Okay, people have asked to see what the inside of Sewer Snake looks like. Well, this is what Sewer Snake looks like after a competition. We just got back from RoboGames 2011, Killer Robots, and we did okay. We were lucky enough to run through the field and able to defeat everybody we came across, and even at the last fighting Last Rights, Ray Billings bot, and yeah, Team Hardcore, and Last Rights did a number on us. You'll see we're missing some axles right now. That's because I had to take those axles off after the competition because they were either bent or bearings were shattered, and this side lost some tires. And but luckily enough, he didn't get our center tires, and we were able to keep driving throughout the entire fight. As you can see, that one's pretty well bent, but it was still letting the system roll. And we'll get inside the robot here in a few seconds to show you how we were able to how this robot did. We'll remove the top flipper, get it out of the way. And the top armor, which isn't really armor, it's about 60 thousandths thick titanium. It's pretty tough for its size, but it's pretty light. This is the inside of Sewer Snake. That's the battery box. We build two separate tops, so if I have to get in there, and we don't necessarily have to get into the middle part of the robot and fix any damage. If we don't think we had any damage and we have a quick turnaround, all we have to do is pop the top off, get the batteries out, change the batteries, and we're ready to fight our next battle. So, this is the inside of Sewer Snake. And we've had questions online about its drivetrain, about what's really inside it, and how we built it. Well, it's an aluminum frame, all welded. It's kind of a unibody almost, with top and bottom plates that make it somewhat of a box, a very strong box. And we keep our drivetrain chain-wise on the outside, away from the middle where all the important parts are. So a robot fighting us has to take out a whole lot over on the right and left side before they get into the good expensive components. The expensive components are basically in the center of the robot, and the only time we really have to worry about those is when we've got overhead hammers or axes or spikes. Then we have to come up with something to basically protect them, which is kind of what we use the top of this for. It gives us about 3 inches of extra, a double layer of shielding, whether we put polycarbonate on it for axes and hammers, or if we don't have quite enough weight, we can put the thin tie on it, and that works pretty well against other types of bots. This was our inaugural damage from Last Rights. The first time we saw him in Combat's Cup, I think would have been 4 or 5, and he ripped a big chunk out of the brand new robot, and that luckily didn't hurt us because it was no drive, no batteries back there. It was just a second layer of the tube construction, and it just took a big chunk out of the outside. But enough of the aesthetic damage. Let's get inside and see what this thing's made of. So the drivetrain is basically, you have a drive motor, which is a mag motor, an S28-400. We got ours from Robot Marketplace. Jim Smentowski out of Florida sells them, and he sells just about everything you need to get a robot built, bought, or assembled, and get to a competition of any sort, whether it be a First Robotics or just building a platform to drive around in your backyard, to build an RC car on steroids, or whatever you want to build. That's kind of what ours are, basically RC vehicles on steroids. So this motor runs through an apex gearhead, which brings it down to a usable RPM We happen to use an 8-to-1 gearbox, I think, right now. And I will double check that because we've used 5-to-1s and 8-to-1s. And this one is a 5-to-1. So it's an Apex. It's a model AB60. And it's a single stage reduction true orbital gearhead. Really tough box. Really tough gearbox. So then the drive coming out of there drives our initial drive chain going to the center axle, and the center axle then slaves to the front and rear axle. So when the center axle's spinning, the front and rear spin off of those. And we've had really good luck with this. The center tires, as you can see, we took damage on the front and the rear. Center tire took very little. Actually, doesn't look like it took any damage. So we've been pretty lucky that our middle axles don't take damage. That's why I drive the middle axle and then slave the other wheels off of that, because this one takes the least. Now if we were to take this chain and drive off of the front and then come back and drive these two off of here, the front tires and the rear tires take the most damage. The front and the rear take the most damage, and so we consider the chains as the weak link, as it would be. As you can see, this is the sprocket out of this axle. Here's the chain. It didn't actually come off, but because they busted this axle so bad, the chain came off the sprocket and then jammed up every once in a while. So when I was driving forward and reverse, every once in a while the wheel would lock up. But all I'd have to do is flip the forward and reverse a couple times. It would free it up, and we were able to continue the fight, even though we actually only had the two center axles. And I can't remember right now. I think the tires were still on, but they were flopping around pretty good. So before we get too much to the center of the drive, A123 batteries is what we're using now. It's a lithium ion, I'm going to say this probably wrong, but look on Google A123 cells, or go to Robot Marketplace, or go to SJ Hill. You can Google Hilltop Battery. He produces some of the best batteries. In fact, we've used only his batteries since we got into the sport. We bought some cheaper ones when we first got into it. We fried a couple. They didn't hold a good charge. We went to Hilltop Battery, and basically he's the only guy that supplied us batteries since then. Until now, we started building some of our own cells. So we've been in the sport long enough, we figure we better start building some of our own products and supply ourselves with things. And it's a little bit cheaper, but the quality definitely isn't quite as good as what I got from Hilltop Battery, but they work, and sometimes we damage them before they wear out anyway. So there you go. But NiCads are good, NIMs are good, A123s, weight to density of power is awesome. Some people are looking towards Li-Polys, but if you want to see the inside of your bot go up in flames, build with Li-Polys, and you may see that. But these ones, A123s, seem to be bulletproof for us, and if Last Rights doesn't blow them up, they're good enough for a pushy bot. So that's basically our drive system. I'll try and get as good as I can get now that the sun started to go down, but hopefully you can see in there, even though it's kind of dark. Sorry about the lighting. Maybe I can lighten this up before I post it. And then the drive is basically the same on both sides, almost exactly the same. So we have just a motor facing the opposite direction, same Apex gearhead, driving to a main sprocket, main center axle, and then slaving front and back off of that. For the lifter, people think we've got some big fancy gears and motors and all kinds of fancy stuff to get that thing working, and it's actually pretty simple. We have an S28 150 mag motor. Again, got it at Robot Marketplace. Going to a little bit bigger, this is a two-stage AB90 gearhead. It's a two-stage, so we actually have two 5-to-1s, so it makes the final gear ratio of the shaft coming out 25-to-1. And then this is 3-to-1 from here, from the main drive sprocket to the lifter sprocket. So our final gear ratio is about 75 to 1. And in heavyweight class, 220-pound robot, it appears to be strong enough to flip us back over when we get flipped over, and to take people and throw them out of the arena or flip them over, whatever works at the type of attack we're doing or the robot we're fighting. So it ends up working pretty good for us. And I don't have any kind of safety devices built into this thing. When we drive it, when I'm driving it, when I tell it to go up, I use the throttle, which is, we took the ratchet off of our remote control, so it's a spring center even on the throttle. So when I want to lift, I pull back on the stick, and this arm goes up. When I want to go down, I push forward on the stick on the left side of the controller, and this goes down. And there's nothing telling it where to stay on the floor. It uses the weight of whatever implement we're using, whether it is a fork, a blade, a plow, just a big bumper, a multiple fork setup, whatever it is. This just goes down, and once we come back to about this elevation when we're driving, the weight of the front end will just let this set back down onto the floor, which works really good. It's really easy. I don't have to think about it. The weight of the front end of this thing just goes back down to the ground. Boom, we're ready to go. If it's up too high and it's not going down, I just flick the stick, get it going down, and boom, it comes down, slaps floor, makes a bunch of noise, and it sounds like I'm actually doing something. But I've had people ask me why I don't have limit switches. I don't trust electronics. It's electronics that always seem to break in these combat robots because of all the G-forces and the shock we see. So the only electronics in this robot are really the speed controllers. And if you look down in the bottom of this, that is a fan off of one of my speed controllers. And you know what? I don't even know where it came from. It might have came from an earlier fight, and I didn't see it, and we put a new speed controller in and ran with it, and it was just floating around in the bottom of the robot. It's all kinds of things you have to, sometimes in the heat of battle you don't have time to find everything that breaks. You shake your robot to hear loose bolts and stuff, because loose bolts and nuts can cause havoc in a fight. At least that's plastic, so it's not going to short anything out, but you never know, could damage something. And one thing, if you've looked at this spot in this video, you'll see a lot of two things: duct tape or Gorilla Tape and wire ties or zip ties. These things are invaluable. You know, we've got these quick couplers on here, so if we blow up a motor in a fight, all we got to do is pop those loops, pull this motor out, slam the new motor and gear head in, and we're ready to fight. And time is everything. There's competitions where we only have 20 minutes between fights, half hour. If we're lucky, we got an hour. And it comes into the pits. You can win or lose in the pits. If you can't fix your robot quick, you'll never make it back into the arena with a working robot, and you may lose your next fight just because you couldn't fix damage on a fight that you won. So everything we try and make really as simple as we can to be able to fix it as quick as possible. And so we have quick connectors here for one of our drive motors. We've got quick connectors up here for our lifter motor. We have one speed controller for the lifter, which is I think they're called a Victor 883. Actually, it's a Thor 883, also known as a Victor 885. The Victor 883s are a lower amperage speed controller. I think the Thors are rated at like 120 amps continuous. Don't know if that's true or not, but for our setup, it's worked really good. And then for our drive motors, we run two Thors or Victor 885s, whichever ones we can get our hands on. These happen to be Thors. But a Thor 883 and a Victor 885 are basically equivalent with some microprocessor changes. But that's basically how we built our robot. And if you look at this video and have any specific questions, I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. But most of the components in our robot are stock, off the shelf, bought at McMaster, bought at your hardware store. or go-kart places. The sprockets I buy from a surplus center, and we lighten them up a little bit. As you can see, the shiny metal, where it's shiny, that's how big the hub used to be. Well, that's a pretty big, heavy hub. We were able to take off about 8 ounces just by milling that down a little bit and making it a little bit smaller. So there's always things you can do to lighten it up. Another thing you might be able to see, or you might not, is we have no adjustment, no tensioning on our chains. We basically designed the robot that when we put a chain on, sprocket to sprocket, it's snug. It's not tight, but there's not very little play in a brand new chain. So after time, you can see we get a little play right now. This chain will not come off the sprocket. That may look like a loose chain, but a loose chain or slightly loose chain has very little friction in it. You don't lose anything in mechanical loss. If the chain is just perfectly tight like you would a belt, you will lose friction. Friction causes losses in mechanical advantage. I know I'm not using the terminology right because I am not an engineer, I'm a plumber. So I've read a lot of stuff, but I can't repeat it because I can't retain information that well. But this chain may look loose, it's perfect. This chain, same way. It moves a little bit. You may not be able to see, and I'm sorry for the lighting, but I don't have a video studio and I got started a little later than I wanted. And if you can't see this on the video, yell at me, make bad comments, tell me to use lights next time, and I'll make another video. Maybe you can see with this chain. This chain has a little bit of play in it. Same reasoning. I'm not going to be able to do it. Got left-handed. But you can see that chain? We've never lost this chain. We've bent that shaft before. Actually, we bent the shaft on a slightly lighter duty gear head. We had a lower grade output shaft. We now have one that's a metric size, but it's equivalent of 3/4 inch. Haven't bent it yet, and we've taken some pretty nasty hits from Ray, from Megabyte, from other people that are some big hitters. Even getting hit with Ziggy when we were fighting in the super heavyweight class, when he flipped our front end and was bouncing us off a wall like a volleyball. Nothing bent. We were surprised. So this is the inside of my robot. 3 motors, 2 drive motors, drive train motors, 1 lifter motor, and the minimal electronics it takes to run it. Basically, we have a radio system in here with a light system that says how good the battery is. If these top ones aren't one of these lit in this top 3, I go back in and recharge it. It's just a volt watch, normal RC stuff, cheap, 10 bucks off the shelf, any RC place, or of course Robot Marketplace. Push button switch. It's a very stiff switch. I got it surplus. They were a surplus military switch. I have no idea what the number is. Guy had them in a bin. They look tough. We've used them. Haven't broken one yet. We've even in a fight against Megabyte, when we were fighting Devil's Plunger against Megabyte, if you've seen that fight where he rips the front end off, his blade went right through the middle of that radio box on our other robot. That thing just kept going. The battery, the motor stayed on. The battery was flopping around inside the robot. Luckily, I duct taped all my wire connections on the RC plugs. RC plugs, we either tape them like this. These are RC plugs. They are all taped together because I don't want them coming apart. If they come apart, it's worthless. So duct tape is your friend. Loose wires are bad. Any wires that are loose and can move, they'll yank right out. They'll yank those connections. They'll pull them apart. So you want to wire tie everything as best you can. This one's loose because it was disconnected. I had some other things I had to get to, so I disconnected it. But as you can see, I wire tie, duct tape everything that looks like it can move. If it can move, I duct tape it. Then it's pretty easy with a razor knife, or just pull the tape off. You can get it apart. It may not look pretty. It may not look like NASA, but you know, we fought some pretty mean bots, and the guys like Megabyte and Last Rights, and a lot of these high kinetic energy robots, if you ever get to see inside those, they're going to have zip ties and duct tape holding stuff together. It's a plus. If you've got a better way to do it, let me know, but it's worked for us and it's cheap. So if you have any questions or want any further information on anything you've seen in this robot, just put a question at the video and I'll try and keep up answers as best I can. And otherwise, build tough, build safe, and come out to a robot competition as soon as you can. Next one I think is in October. The last weekend in October, let's see, what is it? It's going to be Combots Cup. At the end of October, look it up, Google Combots Cup. Come and watch, come and fight, build, whatever. Just get out there. It's a fun sport. We've had lots of fun doing it. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you at a competition soon. Bye now.